muss man echt mal sagen. Ich finde auch James hat die besten Masken von Slipknot, deshalb ist er ja auf meinem Unterarm, weil ich finde die Maske ist einfach, passt einfach perfekt zu seinem Style und ja.
And this is actually pre-disaster pieces, and this was a very, very strange look, again only seen in 1 or 2 photos, and this is the long neck disaster pieces jester. Now for some reason with this mask they left a very long neck intact. James later trimmed this neck up and we got what we know and love as the disaster pieces jester. Now clearly the disaster pieces jester was used in disaster pieces, and that is why we call it the disaster pieces, and this one had a very unique look. It was very straight and forward, it was very clean, there was no extra stitching, there was no extra neck patch, the zipper was straight across, and the mask really didn't weather that heavily. Clearly the mask did weather, leading us to the weathered version, but it's still nothing crazy. It's just a little wear and tear here and there. Now one thing that I always thought was interesting about this mask is that the strapping seemed to bubble the mask out on the cheeks very, very far. Jim always just kind of looked like a chipmunk with this mask. Here we see the disaster pieces mask with a surgical mask on top of it. The word life is written in kanji on the mask. Jim and Clown were known to throw these masks on while in Japan. Next up we have the Reading 2002 jester. This would be the last converted Forums Novelties jester that we would see Jim wear for quite some time, and definitely the last on the Iowa era. Now if you ask me, this is hands down the weirdest converted jester that Jim ever wore. I don't really know how to explain it, but it just had a very lazy look to it. Whoever converted this just didn't really try. Also, just a side note, this is the only jester conversion of Jim's to not feature a zipper handle. Now we move on to the masks that Jim actually had sculpted for him during Iowa, and these were all created by artist Screaming Mad George. First up, we have the silver Iowa Jim mask, and this is hands down one of, if not my all-time favorite Jim mask. There is just something absolutely sinister about this piece. I love this fucking thing. It is immaculate, it is beautiful, there's a strange choice of color going on with an all silver and black look, and I don't know, it's just really fucking rad. I remember seeing this on the cover of Guitar magazine when I was very young and just falling in love with it. Now this mask did have a few different variations. Obviously here we have the bright silver version, and these masks definitely started to wear and tear and weather up because as you can see here, this mask looks completely different. It's got a very strange color, and as you can tell, it is just beat the hell up. Here we can see the mask during the Freddy vs. Jason premiere, again looking very, very strange, almost like a hazy gray rather than a silver, but you can still see some of the sheen left on the mask, and the mask was just absolutely destroyed at this point. You can see a lot of the raw foam, and you can see that the mask has started to get a crazy texture on it from where it has started to dry rot. Here we have another silver variant of the sculpted Iowa Jim mask, and this one was silver, however it was a dull silver, almost a matte silver, whereas the other one actually did have quite a bit of a shine to it. This mask also did not feature an over-the-head strap, although it does appear that it had one at one point. Maybe Jim just cut it off, he didn't like the way that it felt. And out of the two, I don't like this one nearly as much. It's crazy that little details can affect a mask this much. Moving on, we have the second variation of Jim's sculpted masks from the Iowa era, and this is what we refer to as the weird Iowa Jim. This one is referred to as the weird Iowa Jim because it bears almost no resemblance to the other jesters. Aside from having a zipper in the mouth and technically being a jester-style mask, it doesn't really look like the others. Clearly, the silver masks were based directly off of the Forums Novelties jesters, however, this one has a look of its own. Jim barely ever wore this mask, so finding pics and footage of it is an absolute treat, and the mask did go through some changes. Here we have the mask with the top strap of the forehead cut off, once again changing the mask a lot. You can also see that the mask has been heavily weathered at this point. And here we have the same mask again during the recording of the Volume 3 album. You can see Jim wearing this in some photos at the Houdini Mansion, and clearly it is absolutely destroyed. Basically the same thing that had happened with the Silver Jester over time has started to happen to this mask. They were both foam latex masks, meaning that they soaked up any amount of moisture, sweat like a sponge, and that sped up the rotting and dry rotting process a lot quicker than a normal mask. So here you can see that there is a ton of weathering on the mask. You can also see that it has started to kind of condense on itself and shrink shrink a little bit. There's just a lot of shriveling and new textures going on. Now, clearly, seeing this mask used during the recording of the Volume 3 era can only mean one thing, and that is that we are getting extremely close to the Volume 3 era. So, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Volume 3 cycle right after this word from our sponsor. Ha! Just kidding. No companies have the balls to work with the House of Masks. And with that being said,
Doch, ich
we're on to Volume
würde
3.
sofort mit dir arbeiten. Push mich, AG, und ich push dich in Deutschland.
With this first mask here, and keep in mind there won't be a whole lot of changes
Das
to the
ist
Volume
eine
3
meiner
and the All Hope Is
Lieblingsmasken
Gone mask.
von
Honestly, this is where things tend to get a little stale in terms of Jim's masks. We do not see many big changes from this general idea here. Clearly, what we have here is a mask that was once again sculpted for Jim. We are sticking with the jester theme here, but we have gone to a much simpler design. It's a very clean white face mask. It still has the zipper, and it still has the prominent black and red features, but that is about it. This exact copy here is what we refer to as the clean V1, which leads us into the slightly weathered version of it. As you can see, a lot of the colors are getting darker. Almost all of the paint on the lips has faded away, and we also have some face paint and dirt smears on the mask itself. Now, finally for this version, we have the extremely weathered V1, and this one not only has the normal wear and tear and a lot of face paint smears and smudges, but it's also showing a lot of the raw latex underneath the paint job. As you can see down around the chin and neck area, as well as on the nose, the cheeks, and the eyebrows, we all have a lot of exposed latex. Now, it's not certain if Jim had multiple copies of these or if he had just done some touch-ups from time to time, because as you can see on this image, the mask is clearly beaten up and weathered beyond belief, but it still has more red on the lips than the prior version. So if I had to guess, this was a completely separate copy, and the paint on it might not have been as good as the paint on the previous version. Moving on, we have the V2 Jim, and what you'll notice right away is that this is Jim's first mask, aside from the bondage hood, to not feature a zipper. I remember when I saw promo shots for this coming out with Jim at the Houdini Mansion, I was blown away because Jim finally didn't have a zipper, and honestly, I really did like the look of the mask. Now, clearly this mask is from the exact same sculpt and mold as the V1. The only difference here is that it is missing that zipper. Now, how this mask came to be is beyond me. I'm not sure exactly what happened, if it was just an unfinished copy, if Jim specifically requested not to have a zipper, I'm not sure, but from the get-go, it did have some weathering done to it. As you can see in this photo, once again, the chin and the lip area seem to be very heavily weathered, showing some raw latex. Now, one thing that you will notice about this first image as compared to this second image is that this version here actually has red on the lips. Now, clearly that red on the lips had already started to flake off by the time that this photo was taken, but it does count for something. Clearly there was red on the lips here, whereas on the previous copy, there was no red on the lips. Alright, and last but not least, as always for the Volume 3 masks, we are going to be taking a look at Jim's death mask. Once again, not much here that I can say that I haven't said in the previous episodes. These were just plastic masks that Slipknot decided to use for Volume 3 of their own faces. They were translucent, but also had a slightly foggy finish, and Slipknot would wear face paint underneath, giving them an even more grim and dark, macabre look. These masks were made out of plastic and often used during the performance of Vermilion. And believe it or not, that is all of Jim's masks for the Volume 3 era.
Da hast du recht, da gebe ich dir voll recht.
I'm sorry, didn't think that we'd get done with Volume 3 that quick, but I guess we did, so here's All Hope Is Gone. So as we dive on into the All Hope Is Gone era, I want to give you guys a little bit of information here. This was actually the first album to not feature Screaming Mad George as the artist behind the sculpted masks for Slipknot. During this cycle, Screaming Mad George actually passed the torch down to one of his students, a Mr. Rayless Khan. So the masks that were sculpted from the band starting from the Tattoo the Earth era with the Tattoo the Earth clown through Iowa and Volume 3 were all done by Screaming Mad George and his team, but now that duty has fallen upon a new artist, Mr. Rayless, and and we will see what he brings to the table here. Starting off with this Jim Root, All Hope Is Gone. Oh, wait a second, that's actually a volume 3. Sorry about that. Starting off with this Jim Root, All Hope Is Gone mask, and oh my god, that is a volume 3 mask again. Alright, let's just start off with the All Hope Is Gone promo Purgatory masks, or the Purgatory Potatoes, as you guys have come to know and love them. These giant paper mache heads were used for quite a bit of promo material for the All Hope Is Gone era, and they were also used in the psychosocial music video. Apparently, these giant paper mache likenesses of each member represented that member's ego, or their big-headedness. Clearly, by the time All Hope Is Gone came around, the band was very big and very successful, and had been for quite some time. In the psychosocial music video, you can see them actually burning these heads, which was meant to be taken as a metaphor for them losing their ego. Moving right along, we have the debut All Hope Is Gone Jim mask, and as I mentioned earlier, it is extremely similar to the Volume 3 mask.
Das ist mein Tattoo. Ha! Genau